Christ the King be with us as we share this morning. Help us to have words of life and to receive them heartily. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Please be seated. So I may have just given a hint. Pat, you can't answer this question.
Me?
You cannot. No, you cannot answer this question. Alan, you cannot answer this question.
Zip your lips.
Zip your lips. Does anybody else know what Sunday this is?
Christ the King.
Where did you come from?
No, my dad was predictor at
I
Christ
know,
the King.
you snuck in on me. All right, Christ the King. All right, so other than Marcy, Pat, and Alan, and the bulletin, how else might you know that it's Christ the King Sunday?
White.
White and gold.
Yeah, white and gold. We're fancy. It's fancy Sunday, isn't it? This is what we call the incarnation stole, the incarnation liturgical dress. Incarnation being basically the carnation, the coronation of Christ, the realization of God in the flesh coming as King. So the incarnation dress is what we use, and I'm going to try to remember to wear this gigantic chasuble. You know how I feel about chasubles, but on Incarnation Sunday, Christ the King Sunday, I mean, we really want to dress it up and celebrate who Jesus is, Christ the King. It's kind of a funny Sunday because we're also celebrating Thanksgiving this week, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try somehow, I'm sure clumsily, to tie in Thanksgiving and Christ the King Sunday. But we do have a really powerful holiday coming up. It is truly an American holiday. And I'm not going to dwell on the holiday. What I'm going to dwell on is the heart way. That is, what do we need to do in our hearts, both to honor Christ as King and to observe truly this wonderful holiday that is ours, Thanksgiving. It's kind of hard to relate to a king. Us Americans, we're free-spirited, we're independent. We threw off the yoke of oppression, right, years ago, to have separation of powers, to have representatives and leaders who serve us, not dominate us. At least that's the hope, right? So the thought of having a king is not a pleasant thought for us. So it's a little awkward to celebrate Christ as King. I came from Norway, as some of you know, over the summer, that wonderful summer trip we made, and I got to study some of Norwegian royalty. And I don't know if many of you know, but I'm actually writing a book about the experience. So far we're up to about 100 pages. I haven't named the book yet. It's really a first-hand account of the trip, traveling the coast, finding Sogard Farm, and then concluding in Oslo, where actually I've been stuck in the book now for about 3 weeks. It's the hardest part to write for some reason. But in Oslo is the royal palace. It's absolutely gorgeous. It sits at the top of this main thoroughfare called Karl Johan Gate. And the palace is just an eminent structure. You can't miss it. So I did a little history study on it, and I want to read you a paragraph or two out of my book, Draft. This is Draft, okay? But it's a little bit of history about the kingship in Norway, and I'll tie it in here in a minute to the sermon. As an American tourist, I knew little to nothing of the history involved in the monarchy and royal residence of Norway. Only with subsequent research did I come to understand more clearly the long history of Danish and Swedish rule over the Norge. It wasn't too long ago, the year 1905, when Norway became independent from Sweden. This was a move that had been long in the making. 518 years had passed since Norway previously had a monarchy independent from other countries. The secession in 1905 was finalized when Prince Karl of Denmark accepted the Norwegian invitation to become monarch. Prince Karl made known his acceptance of the invitation would be contingent upon the will of the people of Norway. A referendum was put forth for public vote upon which 79% voted in favor of Prince Karl from Denmark becoming their king. The Storting, that is the Norwegian Parliament, made the invitation official with this consent from the public. Prince Karl arrived by ship from Denmark in Oslo, then called Christiania, with his wife, Princess Maud of the British royal family, on November 25th, 1905. 2 days later, he was sworn in as king, adopting the Old Norse name of Hakon, which means high sun. A few months later, on June 22nd, 1906, King Hakon VII and Queen Maud were coronated as Norwegian royalty at the Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim, where we went. This all seems so pertinent to me because I was just right there. It's so exciting to be in the footsteps of all this stuff that happened. The point is, I thought it was fascinating, first of all, that Norway had to go outside of its own country to find a king and a queen. They had to go to Denmark to get the king, who happened to be married to Queen Maud, or Princess Maud, who is British royal family. And I thought it was fascinating that Prince Karl didn't just say, "Oh, sure, I'll be the king." But he said, "No, I won't be the king unless the people want me to be the king." That was a wise move, wasn't it? And then 79% of the people said, "Yes, we want the Prince of Norway to become our king." And so he was coronated. And the rest is history. The point is that that's the way a kingship really should work. It should be an invitation by the people. And I guess that's part of what democracy is supposed to be, isn't it? An invitation by the people to serve and to lead. And it's also really applicable to Christ as king. Because although God reigns, and Jesus, according to Colossians, that powerful passage that we heard today, has a kingdom that translates us from darkness into light, we have to invite him to be king. There's something really powerful about invitation. Jesus is ready to be king, but he's probably kind of like Prince Karl. He says, "I will be king of your life, but only if you invite me." Well, there's a lot that compels us not to invite kingship, isn't there? Whether it's the way we spend our money, or the way we spend our time, or the way we want to direct our life, even the way we want to do things in church. There are many things about us that really refuses kingship because we don't want to be governed at that level. But the practice that Jesus has in his kingship is one more of a shepherd king. That's what we learned from the Jeremiah passage today. A shepherd king who understands the needs of the sheep. A shepherd king who deals gently with his people. A shepherd king who doesn't exalt himself, but comes as one to serve. I think we could be thankful for that, don't you? That's the kind of king I could serve, even as an American. I could serve that kind of a king. The scriptures have a lot to say about how we enter into relationship with that kingship. And the most fundamental way of all, besides invitation, is thanksgiving. And so there's my link between thanksgiving and this kingship idea. Psalm 100, the Jubilate. Where would you find that, do you think, in the prayer book? Not Alan? Not you? No, Martin. Where might you find the Jubilate?
Next to the Venite.
And where would you find the Jubilate and the Venite? Good point. I'll give you a 90%. Where?
Morning prayer.
Whoa, morning prayer. Bing, bing, bing. Yeah, morning prayer. Why do you know that? Because we've actually practiced it, right? Why don't you just turn to page 87. Let's just look at that. Nope, wrong page. First one to find the Jubilate.
82.
82, thank you.
Good, Mark.
Well, I'm glad you're here today, Margie. The Jubilate. What do you think Jubilate means? Yeah, joy. It's all about jubilation, right? I had a dear cousin. She was wild and wacky. She was much older than me and much crazier than I am. And I loved her dearly, and she was always saying, we're going to get together and have a jubilee. And I never knew what the jubilee was, but I knew it was really exciting. We're going to have a jubilee. I think that's what jubilate comes from, is the thought of having a jubilee, a really great time. Psalm 100. Let's read it together. Be joyful in the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness, and come before his presence with a song. Know this, the Lord himself is God. He himself has made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving. Go into his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and call upon his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his faithfulness endures from age to age. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, right? And into his courts with praise. So those two principles are just hand in glove. We have this kingship experienced in our life through invitation. We ask to be under the dominion of Christ. And then we experience the jubilate of it, the jubilee, by entering in with thanksgiving. Now, I've been really convicted about this week, actually. I found myself being very glum. Do you ever do that? Yeah. In fact, I have two pictures. I wish I had them hand in hand of myself in high school. Two high school portraits. Anybody remember your high school portraits? Mm-hmm. Those old black and white things? I don't know what was up, but with mine I have two. One, I am absolutely smiling and happy, and the one next to it I am so glum. And for some reason, the glum one more people have in my family than the happy one. In fact, I'm having a hard time finding the happy one. But I realized this week, I walk around glum much of the time. I asked God, I said, Lord, I don't want to be glum. I want to experience your jubilation. How can I do that? The answer I got for me, and I'm going to share it with you, maybe it's just a prescription for me, but I'm going to give it to you as a possibility for Thanksgiving week, was to be more thankful. And this is what I felt the Spirit tell me. First of all, I want you every day this week to practice thanking someone you do know. Well, that's easy enough. And then I heard, and then thank somebody you don't know. I thought, well, that's going to be a little harder. And then thank yourself.
That's even harder.
That's even harder. And then thank God. So I had this four-fold task all week between now and Thanksgiving Day. Thank someone I do know. Thank someone I don't know. Thank myself. And thank God. And maybe I won't be quite so glum as I walk around the grocery store or whatever. And so I put it into practice yesterday. As I'm coming out of the grocery store, you know, the poor guy who's putting all the carts together, right? Pulling all the carts back in. I saw him at a distance and I said, okay, I'm going to practice, Lord. So I walked over to him and I said, I really appreciate you doing this. I know that as fast as you put them out there, we put them back. Thank you. He said, well, you're welcome. And I walked away and I was smiling. I thought, well, I'm not glum. And then I went and I thanked me for being me. And that was a little harder, like you said. And then I thanked God for being God. And that was a little easier than even thanking for being me. So I'm going to practice that, and I'm going to give you that prescription. Maybe you want to try it for just 3 or 4 days before Thanksgiving. Thank someone you don't know. It works. Thank someone you do know. Thank someone you don't know. Thank yourself. It works. And thank God. It works. All right. There's a testimonial. Priests aren't supposed to be glum, are they? I've noticed a lot of glum priests, though. Priests can get really serious. So don't ever let me catch that disease, okay? Just don't let me do it. Say, Stuart, practice your prescription. There's another psalm that has come to me a lot this week, and it has to do with attitude again. This attitude of invitation and thanksgiving. And it's Psalm 27, verse 7 through 10. I know it from the King James Version, so that's how I'm going to I know a song. I'm not going to inflict the song on you. In fact, as I was preparing the sermon today, I had one of my big fat cats sitting next to me, and he likes to just be there while I'm talking, and not talking, typing or whatever I'm doing. And then this song came to me, and I started singing to him, and he looked at me. His eyes got. I said, "Well, I guess I won't pull that off on the congregation today." But the song is this: "Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Selah. But we have to do our part. We have to lift up our heads. We can't go around being glum and experience the kingship of Christ. We enter into his courts with thanksgiving, and into his gates with thanksgiving, into his, there you go, his courts with praise. It has to be an act of our heart. That is the heart way of thanksgiving. And then before I close today, I just wanted to hearken back to last week's sermon, because Mary Wilson, that sermon was for you, wasn't it?
It was.
Because the sermon was all about endurance. And old St. Paul wasn't going to let you escape today. It was back there. Did you notice it?
Yeah,
You did.
and I was thinking about that all week, about endurance.
Well, for whatever reason, it came to us twice. So maybe endurance has something to do with Thanksgiving too. He says, in the Colossians verse today, "May you be made strong with all the strength that comes from his glorious power. And may you be prepared to endure everything with" what? Patience. "While joyfully giving thanks to the Father, who has enabled you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light." That's a lot of themes. At the heart of it is the blessing of being under the reign, under the dominion of a kind, loving monarch who is Christ our Lord. And we experience that by inviting him into that position in our lives and by giving thanks. Amen.
Gracie?
Gracie, yep, come on up. Aren't we lucky?
I didn't quite prepare to show for me, but I'm gonna go with it. Okay, what do I got here? Gee, they're pretty interesting, huh? This one actually shows a fort. Fort Niagara. That's where my grandmother lived in Youngstown. So these have keys to my parents' places. And this one with my name on it has keys to my house, the post office. And they're just different keys that open different places, right? And what if, like Alice in Wonderland, you're looking through a little door in a keyhole. Now, these days you can open up doors with your phone, can't you? You think you can do that? Yeah, there are all kinds of keys to open places, but in the old-fashioned houses, you used to have keyholes you could look through, and you could see wondrous things beyond that doorway, right? Well, we just had an inspiring sermon that was like, lift up your gates. So how are you going to open gates? With keys. And what do? You invite people in, you open up the door, right? So who's a key? Who can be a key that helps you open up the door to invite people into you? To be Christ. He's the key that helps you lift up those gates and welcome and invite not only him in your life, but God and everybody else, right? So you remember when you're kind of stuck in a place and you want to open up, go someplace, remember that Christ holds the key too for you. You just look to Christ, turn to Christ, and he'll help you open up those gates. Yeah? Does that help? Good to be back. Good to see you, Gracie. Okay.
Amen.